Welcome back, everyone, to our cryptocurrency recap here at Money Morning. We're, of course, joined again by Dave Zeiler, our cryptocurrency expert. Now, Dave, there's been a lot of action going on with Bitcoin this week. We saw it following the markets. The markets kind of at large, we're seeing taking a lot of losses this week from trade and economic data coming out. And Bitcoin followed it down this time, which is, in the past, we've seen it more behave like a haven where it's gone up when the market has gone down. So what's different about this time?
Well, what we saw this week was actually on Tuesday, the stocks were up and Bitcoin was down. And we're thinking, well, maybe that's how a safe haven would work. But then the very next day, stocks crashed and Bitcoin went even further down. So what we're seeing is that it is not yet acting as a safe haven, at least not consistently. That eventually, I think it will act as a safe haven. It'll act more like gold, but it's very young. It's still only 10 years old. We have a long way to go with Bitcoin. And I think someday it'll get there. How long it's going to take, it's hard to say. But for now, I think people should try to not worry about it too much and read too much into these things, because when you look at what happened, why did Bitcoin go down as much as it did? Nobody really knows. All the articles are just kind of like, we have no idea what happened. I think it may have something to do with whales involved in the market and that are accumulating, but even that is hard to say.
Yeah. So in addition to that, we also saw some action from regulators like the SEC this week. What's been happening with that?
Well, the SEC has for a long time been making rumblings about the ICOs, the initial coin offerings that were very popular back in 2017, have kind of petered out a little bit. But they were very concerned about these things being unregulated securities, that's what they do. They regulate securities. They don't want people doing this stuff without them overseeing it. And they have very recently started to crack down a lot more. They've been talking about it for a long time, but we haven't seen a whole lot of action. Apparently now they're starting to actually do things. We saw just several this week, actually. One was a company called Simply Vital Health. They had raised $4.3 million at one of their ICOs, and the SEC was like, no, you can't do that. They had to give all the money back to the investors.
Wow.
But once they did that, which was interesting, the SEC was like, okay, now we're not going to prosecute you. We're just going to drop the whole thing. They just wanted to make it clear that you can't do this. The other case that I saw that was very interesting was a company called Veritasium, and they had a $14.8 million offering back in 2017. But in this case, the guy who was running it took $500,000 for his own self.
That'll do it.
And so the SEC cracked down on that, and he was also manipulating trading, and they were like, very harsh with that guy too. But what it looks like they're doing is, now that they've kind of decided what they want to do with these ICOs and these tokens, is that they're picking some of the worst offenders and making an example out of them to try to make sure that other people don't come along and try to launch these things, which basically some of them are scams. They're just, somebody creates a coin, they put it out there, people buy it, they take the money, and then the company goes out of business, they have the money. And that's what the SEC wants to avoid. It's not good for investors who are vulnerable to this sort of thing. Their role is to protect the retail investor, and that's exactly what they're doing here.
Yeah, so in your opinion, then, do you think it's good that they're cracking down on this, or do you kind of favor the less regulated side of it?
I know a lot of people in crypto want less regulation or no regulation, but I still think that the protection of investors is a good thing, and that what they're doing is a good thing. And I do think they'll also find ways to allow ICOs to exist. There's been a lot of other ideas thrown around. Eventually we'll get there. We will have ways to create cryptos that will not violate the SEC and will offer protections to investors.
Great. Well, thanks so much for just kind of catching us up and giving some insights here, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks.